Okay, well, hello everybody, and welcome to another presentation of the online ColdFusion Meetup. I'm Charlie Earhart, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. And in this edition of the Meetup, our 246th, being recorded on Thursday, August 4th, 2016 at noon U.S. Eastern Time, we've got Patrick Quinn, who's going to talk to us about SeeFusion 5 for CF and Lucee monitoring and troubleshooting. Thanks for coming on, Patrick, and with that, I'll stop sharing. You go ahead and take it away.
Just as a quick point of order, I'm going to switch back and forth to my notes. I've got this on its own desktop on a Mac. I won't get into Mac versus Windows religious wars, but I'll switch back and forth. So you may see the screen share turn into that kind of hashed blue or black box. Don't worry about that. I'm just switching back and forth. Anyway, thanks everyone for coming. Appreciate your time. So this is a presentation of SeeFusion 5. At long last, we have SeeFusion 5 out the door. We shipped on May 31st. And I want to show you as much as I can. Today, I'll take just about a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about WebApper, because I know we'll have some new faces. We've been around a long time in the ColdFusion CFML community, but I know we'll have some new names and faces here, so I'll get just a little bit of history out, and then we'll get right into SeeFusion. I'm mostly going to focus on the new features. I will repeat some things about SeeFusion's functionality, so for those who already know it, apologies for that, but I want to make sure I don't skip over any of the basics. Then I'm going to get right into the new features. We have, does my list tell me here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 key new features that I want to highlight, and then I also want to make sure I leave time for FAQ, and so that's how we'll tackle it. So very briefly, I know Charlie had the intro slide up, but I'm Patrick Quinn. I am one of the 2 co-founders. If anyone knows Mike Brunt with that great Northern English accent, he is the other co-founder of WebApper, still with us. We're in our 15th year. I'm the CEO and CTO these days. I carry a couple of titles, and I lead us in what we do. We started back in 2001. Actually, the kind of work that we do largely focused on ColdFusion performance engineering, as we call it. Big systems, complicated systems, large clustered systems, pretty much all of them high traffic, although not all of them. We have plenty of SeeFusion customers, for example, thousands around the world who run SeeFusion on just 1 or 2 servers, and so we love those folks too. But we really cut our teeth on big systems. Our work actually and our experience with ColdFusion-based systems, CFML-based systems, goes all the way back to Alaire Consulting Services. That was really the first big global ColdFusion consulting firm. I worked there, Mike Brunt worked there, Daryl, the chief architect of SeeFusion, Matt Hinsey, our VP. I'm sorry, whoops, sorry there, Matt Stavanis, our VP. Matt Hinsey, who's in the online meeting room here today, he was also at Alaire Consulting. So that was a big crew of about 40 field engineers, and we flocked out and hit the world and worked on the biggest ColdFusion systems for Alaire. Anyway, we started WebApper right after that, and we've been doing exactly this kind of work ever since. We're in our 15th year now. We also do custom application development. It's an important detail about us that we were born and bred as a consulting services company. We remain a services company, not a product company. SeeFusion is our product, but it grew out of our consulting services. And I'll touch on that again in a bit. That's an important part of who we are. SeeFusion makes us better in terms of what we do as consultants for support services for ColdFusion or CFML-based systems. I keep saying CFML-based systems. We are also financial and technical supporters of Lucee. We are dues-paying members of the Lucee Association Switzerland. We've done that in the last couple of years because we think that open source CFML is really the future for ColdFusion-based systems, especially in terms of the cloud. The cloud is a big, I mentioned that we're a services company. The cloud is a major part. It's really the foundation of our company right now. We are, going back to what I'd said about us being a services company, we are an Amazon Web Services partner. We provide fully managed hosting services in the Amazon cloud. And if you go to the Amazon partner directory, for example, and search for either the keyword ColdFusion or the keyword Lucee, we're the only firm you're going to find. And so that reflects this long history of providing services. And in the last 3-4 years, we've added fully managed cloud hosting services. SeeFusion, by the way, is an important part of that. When SeeFusion 5.1 comes out, we will have formal integration, pretty deep integration with the Amazon cloud. So I'll mention that a little later in the talk. Anyway, that's some very brief history. Sorry, I got to check my presenter here. Yes, we're not showing anything now. So um, just to your point, Charlie, I'm not sharing the screen yet, but I will get this ugly hash off of people's screens in just about another minute here. I wanted to talk about some overall design considerations for SeeFusion. So the history of SeeFusion, very briefly, is we were the first monitor to the marketplace, specifically built for ColdFusion systems. Of course, the server monitoring market is a very broad and deep market, lots and lots of options, Windows and Unix and so forth. But we were the first to market in 2004 with a monitor that was built specifically to monitor ColdFusion-based systems. There was no open source ColdFusion back then. But SeeFusion is written entirely in Java. I'll talk a little bit about what's changed on the user interface. That used to be written in Flex, and it used to be Flash Player based, although there was a chintzy-looking HTML version. But for the longest time, we were stuck there and needed to get out. So we've rewritten the user interface entirely. The user interface is an Angular-based application, AngularJS, and the backend is all Java. And so that's a quick summary of the architecture. First to market in 2004, we've been selling these licenses for 12 years now. About 18 months later, give or take, our friends at Fusion Reactor, Integral, they launched Fusion Reactor. That was our first competitor. And then sometime after that, I think about 2007 or so, Adobe launched the ColdFusion Server Monitor built into the administrator. I was at a CF United conference speaking about this, and I teased the Adobe guys in the back of the room. I said, hey, welcome to the party. Glad you guys could finally catch up. So that was reflecting the fact that we had been out in the marketplace with a ColdFusion specific monitoring troubleshooting tool for quite a few years there. Anyway, some design considerations. We take something of a purist, almost stubborn approach in terms of how we design SeeFusion. Some of our primary considerations are low overhead. We have been fanatical about the fact that we never, ever, ever want SeeFusion to have detectable overhead. Again, many of the systems, probably the large majority of the systems that we work with and that SeeFusion is running on are high traffic systems. There's just no room for the monitoring tool ever getting in the way. And you'll never catch SeeFusion as part of the active part of a stack trace. So low overhead, very small footprint. The actual application itself is about 2 megabytes these days after all these years of development. It's very much a less is more philosophy, and you may even see that, in fact, in terms of comparing SeeFusion to other products out there. We're okay with that. Our goal is to pack the most benefit in for the best possible value, and of course part of the value is the price. I'll talk about pricing towards the end of our talk here. Okay, so the what's new features I want to cover. We have a mobile-ready user interface. We have server profiles, incident reports, denial of service protection, SeeStack, hourly licensing. We have a new hourly licensing feature. Live chat, which is built into the SeeFusion application. Some of you may have seen that. I'll talk about that. And also a new package of support plans. So that, of course, goes along with the launch of the product back on May 31st. And we also relaunched, not to get into the details, but we rebuilt and relaunched SeeFusion.com. We're using the excellent e-commerce system for shopping cart and checkout from our friends at 1024 Solutions. They make Slapwall e-commerce, really excellent ColdFusion-based system, and a really great company. So our checkout process is based on that. It runs in a custom-built, pretty much bulletproof AWS hosting environment. Please don't go and try and hack it after the call, but it's a pretty sleek system overall. So that's all kinds of background work too. Okay, let's. Everyone should be seeing the screen now. I'm going to bounce around a little bit, so apologies if the screen gets a little jumpy. But I just want to start by highlighting the mobile-ready UI. So of course, for the longest time, we were locked into the Flash player. We were actually overdue for fixing that. So one of the first, biggest, heaviest lifts of SeeFusion 5 was to rewrite the user interface 100%. And of course, it's entirely browser-based now, HTML5 based. I mentioned that the actual client-side application is an Angular.js based application. We love Angular. We're pretty big on Angular. And it's also responsive. So you can, you'll see as you start moving around the window now, shrinking the view, and you'll see that things will happen. The text will disappear from the left menu. If you're looking at this on actual devices, we're sniffing, device user agents and all that jazz. And the screen should be beautiful on any sort of screen that you're looking at. So finally, SeeFusion has a fully mobile-ready, fully responsive, anywhere, any screen sort of user interface. And we are overdue for that, but that's one of the things that we worked on. I'm going to go back to full screen here, and let me just quickly bounce back over and look at the chat. Oops, sorry about that. Hold on. Apologies for rearranging the screens here. This is the Mac life. Okay, didn't miss any chats. I'll get moving again. So we also tried to incorporate some user experience improvements as well. You can toggle the nav on and off. That's one example. And so you should have seen now that you've gone really full screen. A lot of our customers, we have thousands of customers in the low thousands around the world running SeeFusion on many, many thousands of servers. And so we've talked with a lot of people over the years about how they actually use SeeFusion, how they run it. A lot of people will have a SeeFusion browser window open on a separate monitor, full screen, and they'll just be, looking at whatever metrics are most important to them. But we wanted to help out with that a little bit by making a collapsible navigation. So I just toggled that off. I will run through the screens just very quickly, but I'm going to stop and talk about individual screens quite a bit. So this is the main server screen. When you fire up SeeFusion, this is the default screen that you come to. And on this screen, there are some important elements that I want to point out. So there are these three pods at the top. The first pod is an overall summary pod, a pod containing summary metrics. The percentage of memory that is allocated and in use, that's the technical definition of that, 62%, that's quite healthy. The amount of uptime, the last time that this instance of SeeFusion was updated, and then some more summary metrics in a different format about memory. So the total memory allocated to this ColdFusion instance is 3 gigs, and 2 of those are in use, and so about 1 gig is free. These controls are important. By default, SeeFusion only manually refreshes now, and that's this refresh button here. So as I click refresh, you will see the screen change a little bit. You'll see we're capturing some actual requests here. Just a quick note about where this is running. This is running on a 3-server cluster for one of our customers, and we have permission to show this off, in the Amazon cloud. These are pretty busy servers. So you can see right now it's a 3-server cluster. This middle pod here summarizes request metrics for this ColdFusion instance. SeeFusion is fundamentally a per ColdFusion instance monitor. So it's installed per ColdFusion instance. It's a Java servlet filter or a valve, if anyone's interested in that. It's per server licensing now. We did change the licensing to be true per server licensing. So however many instances you have running on a server, you can run SeeFusion on as many of those as you want, as long as you have a server license. But SeeFusion always monitors per instance of ColdFusion or Lucee, of course. So this middle pod is request summary activity. The last time I manually refreshed, we caught 2 active requests. There have been a total of 3 million requests since the last update, a restart rather, of ColdFusion. This is a Lucee system, by the way, that this is running on. This was 2 days ago. That was the last restart of this Lucee instance. And at the point of that last refresh, we had there were 30 requests running. In the past second, there were 30 requests that ran at an average of 6 milliseconds. In the past 10 seconds prior to that, 276 requests completed at average of 14. And in the 60 seconds prior to that refresh, 1,749 ran at an average of 54 milliseconds. Charlie was pointing this out to me. He and I talked last week. In some sense, this is not a great set of servers to be running these on. These are WebApper tuned and WebApper hosted servers. These suckers are lightning fast. You're going to be hard pressed to find any requests that run over 100 milliseconds, even under heavy load. But we will find some slow requests, I promise you. They always sneak their way in there anyway. That explains some of these low times. Third pod over here is queries. This summarizes query activity. So again, at the last refresh, we didn't catch any active queries, but since the last restart of Lucee on this server. There have been 7.5 million queries that ran, and this is the same last 1 second, 10 second, and 60 seconds of information about queries that ran, and this is the run times. So these 3 summary pods used to be that this kind of server level summary information was only available on the server screen. As I walk through the menu here on the left, you will see that those pods stay in place on all the screens now. So wherever you are, we try to keep that information in your view all the time. Wherever you're at, those pods are going to stay with you. And of course, I'll get into more detail on these screens, don't worry about that. But I'm just marching through the screens to show you how those 3 pods stay in place. Now, these controls over here on this first pod, they also control how SeeFusion refreshes. So by default, when you first fire it up, out of the box, it refreshes manually. So you can leave it like that. You can just hit that refresh button when you want, or you can select auto refresh intervals of 5, 10, 30, and 60 seconds. And so I'll set this to 5, and then it'll actually just start refreshing automatically now. So you should see that from time to time on the screen. If I pull this menu down, you'll see that that option is highlighted in blue, so that tells you that it's selected, and that's how you're refreshing. And then this refresh control, this covers all refreshes across the system. So now the dashboard is also refreshing every 5 seconds. The counter screen, this is refreshing every 5 seconds as well. I'll leave this open here so you can see some of the, whoops, let me close this live chat over here. I'll come back to live chat in a bit. You can see the counter screen starting to fill up, and again, that's covered, controlled by these controls in this first pod. By default, the counters are reverse sorted from the most recent snapshot. So every 5 seconds, we're getting these metrics snapshotted from the server, and we're reporting them here on the screen. And this, in the old days, a lot of you probably remember this, we had CFStat, and that was a command line tool, and that was a really useful tool. We used it like crazy in the old days. Counters is intended to recreate some of what you could see with CFStat. A lot of our customers just have the counter screen up and running and use that as a way to keep track of things and make sure nothing untoward is happening with the server. So again, these controls in these top 3 pods, these 3 pods stay with you. These controls control the refresh with one exception. And over here on the server screen, now the middle part of the server screen is you have active, there's 3 tabs: active requests, recent requests, and slow requests. Whenever there's a refresh, we will always report all of the active requests, no matter how many there are. That's not configurable. And then recent requests is configurable, the size of this history. And so when you come to this, you can see your recent requests. This is just in order of time completed. And then you can separately highlight slow requests. I mentioned that there will be some slow requests. And so here they are. This is the slow request tab. And you can see this one ran a little over a second. Here's one that ran 9.9 seconds, 8.4, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the slow request tab. I was about to explain that there is an exception to the refresh controls up here at the top of the screen, which is these charts. These charts have a mind of their own. It's always been this way, even going back to SeeFusion 4 and earlier. These refresh every 60 seconds, regardless of what else is going on with SeeFusion, regardless of what you have your refresh interval set to over there on that first pod. And so a lot of customers, again, have this window open. This particular chart, we call it the pages chart, but it's actually, that shows you pages and queries. So it'll just show you on a minute-to-minute basis what's happening with pages and queries. These things, if these things spike, you can see it. We'll talk about ways to get information from SeeFusion 2 automatically without having to be staring at the screen all the time. We'll come back to that. Anyway, I wanted to point out that these charts will refresh every 60 seconds. You can expand them like this and close them back down. You can pick which one you want. If your system's more memory sensitive, you might have that memory chart up, or whatever your needs may be. Okay, so I'm going to pause again for just a second, swipe over and make sure I'm not missing any chats. Of allocated rather than percent of max heap. Right. So Charlie had asked a question about the memory percentage. So the memory percentage will be based on what your actual memory settings are. We've always recommended to our customers that you set a min and a max heap and you set them to the same number. So in that case, SeeFusion will show you the total allocated, which because you have min and max set to the same number, will be the total. So in this case, it's 3 gigabytes. And then of the amount that's allocated, the amount in use is what's used, and the amount free is the difference between the two, and then the percentage reflects that. And so that's a quick answer to Charlie's question there. I will, let me just take a look at my server here and some of my metrics. I'll explain one last thing here, which is this garbage can looking thing. It's not a delete button, it's a garbage collection command, and you can issue garbage collection commands to your Lucee or ColdFusion instance, and that can be very important. Generally speaking, you don't want to be manually collecting your garbage. You want your memory settings to be optimized to where that all happens with extreme efficiency, and garbage collection and all the related activities never becomes any kind of a prominent problem that has to be intervened into manually. But that said, if you do need to, it's here. I'm going to go ahead over to the second server in this cluster, and I'll refresh that. And oops, that looks like it may have gone to sleep there. Since we're entirely browser-based here, you can see that we can just hit the refresh button on the browser. Refreshes very, very quickly. So we're at 73% usage here. I'm going to actually collect this garbage, let you see how that looks. And all right, so we got a 1.4 millisecond full garbage collection. And there is a little bug here. This didn't refresh by itself. That's going to be fixed in the next release. You see, though, we went from 73%, I think, to 19%. So that was a 1.4 second GC, but that was very productive. We collected a lot of garbage and freed it up. So that's what that icon there indicates. All right. Okay, so let's go back to Web 1. This is the server screen. I talked about that, and I talked about the different grids. By the way, these grids are clickable, so you can actually click on an individual request, and you get a new request detail tab, and it'll show you all sorts of summary metrics about that. This shouldn't say not a number, but the reason there is no number there is because this was an active request, so we haven't had the first byte of the response flushed yet, so that's why that shows as not a number. Anyway, and all these grids have clickable requests in them, and so you can, this blue highlight, by the way, is another bug. That'll be fixed in the next release. You can click on any of these and get request details very quickly. And over here on the active, there's 3 icons I'll just point out quickly, and then we'll move on. These are all configurable. This allows you to, whoops, got to wait till we catch another live request here. The first icon, of course, now I'm not getting any active requests. The first icon allows you to get a stack trace. You can give that a shot, see if you can get a stack trace. I'll come back to SeeStack in a minute. The second icon there, let's try to get ourselves a live request. That's actually the kill button. I'm not going to kill this, but that's a feature in SeeFusion. You can kill long-running requests if they're killable. Not all requests are killable, but if they are, we've got a kill button there for you. Or you can just open the URL, and so there you go. There's our customer's system. And so those are some features of the active request grid. Recent requests don't have those except for the open URL icon, because they're already completed, so you can't kill them, of course, and you can't get a stack on a request that's already completed. Same thing with the slow request grid. Anyway, that's the main view of SeeFusion, the server screen. Moving quickly, dashboard is an enterprise-only feature, and you can configure your dashboard to monitor multiple servers, and so that can be really important on multiple server systems, and it's a one-screen simple view of everything that's going on all your servers. We show uptime, we show status. These are color coordinated, so as any of your servers get in trouble, these will turn yellow or red if it's really serious, based on slow requests or memory percentage, and that's configurable. And we've all got all kinds of summary metrics over here. And if you need to, you can quickly drill into another server. So I just popped into server 2. You see up here now we're on Web 2. And I open that from the dashboard on server 1. We also, with SeeFusion 5, are wanting to highlight a lot more information for you and include a lot more problem-solving intelligence and a lot more connecting of the dots. And so there's another tab here which would only show you your servers that are in trouble. And again, in trouble is defined as slow requests, number of slow requests, memory percentage, that sort of thing. And then Incidents, this is all enterprise only again, the whole dashboard. Incidents is an on-screen display of active monitoring rules that were triggered, and I'll show you active monitoring rules in a minute. So here again, we're harvesting more information from SeeFusion's database. SeeFusion's database logging, which is its persistence mechanism, is an enterprise-only feature as well. But we save all of these metrics to a database, and we're very careful about how we do that. We have low priority threads, and we have lots of careful coding around that. So again, our inserts and updates never become a problem. But we do persist those to a database. Everything else in SeeFusion is maintained in memory and very small memory buffers so that, again, we never get in the way in terms of efficiency. I mentioned counters, and so counters are another view of the system, and it's very much a snapshot view. Over here, we're still at our 5-second interval, so I'll show you that there on the menu, and that's another way to keep an eye on your systems. The configuration screen, it's fully configurable, browser-based configurability, and these are all of the ways to configure SeeFusion with one exception, which is DOS protection. So DOS protection is configured elsewhere. Everything else is configured here. And again, the dashboard and database logging, those are enterprise-only features. So on a SeeFusion standard install, you'd only see general security and display. Active monitoring, this is the way I mentioned earlier that there are ways to keep track of your systems without actually having to stare at the screen all day long. Hold on one second, let me check on questions. Okay, we're good. And so active monitoring rules is how you do that. So you give your rule a name, you can turn it on or off. There are predefined trigger types, and they are the ones in this list here: active request count, memory utilization percentage, 1 minute average page time, 1 minute average query time, or page times for any single request or single query in the system. And you put in your threshold that you want. You can have exclusions. You can delay and sleep these rules, and then you can intervene automatically. The two main ways to do that are to kill a request. You can set that to happen automatically, or you can send an email notification. And so lots and lots of customers use this simple SMTP configuration here. You just need to point us to an SMTP server, and then SeeFusion can be taking care of your systems without you being there, which is really kind of the holy grail. If you have SeeFusion Enterprise, then over here in the dashboard, anytime these rules are triggered, you'll see them in this incident list. You can click on an individual incident. A little delay there in the incident. Oops, there it goes. And so then you get some more summary information on the incident on screen, in addition to email notification if you've got that set up. So that's active monitoring rules. SeeStack is used to be a separate free product that we just had hanging out there online, and quite a few people used it, but it wasn't all that great. So we baked that into SeeFusion. And so this is an evolving functionality here. This is basically SeeStack 1.0. The one that was online and free was basically a .9 sort of release. Never paid much attention to it. But now, I'm not sure if you can see the tooltips. I think that you probably can here in Connect screen sharing. But we have tooltips here that actually help you read your stack traces. So stack traces are it's part art and part science to be reading these suckers, and it takes a long time to get good at it, and you have to just read a lot over time. In any case, we're trying to make that process easier with the built-in SeeStack here. So we have tooltips now and highlighted text colors, mostly to differentiate the different parts of the stack, but also to indicate some level of urgency. So this is a request that was calling to the database and waiting for a response. And so that's what this request was doing. Generally speaking, if you get a lot of requests that are caught in that state, especially if they're caught in that state for a long time, that's your clue that you've got slow queries. And here in green, you can see that we've got the actual code file and the line number highlighted. So you'll want to look for green here in your stack traces. And going back to the server screen, if you catch an active request and come over here to the stack, so there you go. So this is another request that we caught in a database conversation and waiting for a response. And so that's how SeeStack works. We just got another stack dump there. You can also search for certain thread names if you want to really quickly get through the list. And so here's some threads that have HTTP in the name or whatever you might want to search for. And you can also filter this down to show only your active threads. And so If you do that, we're going to improve this button a little bit, but that can be helpful too. If you keep seeing the same active thread over and over again, that's going to be an area of code that you're going to want to focus on. And again, we highlight that in green. Okay.
Hey, Patrick?
Yeah.
Patrick, mind if I interject something? Sorry, I don't usually interject, but you'd said earlier, back when you were talking about, oh darn, you just lost it. Can you get back to where you're displaying a running request in the stack trace?
Let's see. There we go.
I know the chances of getting good, there's one right there.
Yeah.
So you had said earlier you'll never see SeeFusion in a stack trace, and yet it is in there. I mean, this particular one, it's down the screen a little bit, but there it is at the bottom, 6 on the bottom. Com SeeFusion filter, do filter, and com SeeFusion valve invoke. So when you said you'd never see SeeFusion in a stack trace, did you mean
active part of the stack? Active part of the stack meaning that you're actually in a SeeFusion method right at the top of the stack, which, as you know, is pretty much always what's running right now.
Sure.
That's what I meant by that. Yeah, you're right.
Fair enough. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
You can't stay out of the chain entirely. That's how we hook in. So
someone could have misinterpreted what you meant by that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, no, thanks for pointing it out. Okay, so I'll start to move into some new features now. I talked about the mobile-ready UI. Probably the most important new feature is server profiling. So this is another way that we allow you to capture information about your system without you being there, and then we try to harvest that information, harvest the valuable information out of what we capture. So this is probably the piece that we worked on most heavily, alongside the rewriting the entire UI and doing all the UX work too. That was a big lift, but this is the area where we put a lot of focus. So the way you record a profile, this is passive profiling, by the way. So it's as gentle a form of profiling as you can run on a live system. There's no instrumentation of any applications or code whatsoever, or the JVM or any of that. And so you can get deeper information out of active profiling. There's just no denying that, but we don't go there based on what I was saying earlier. Our design philosophy is that we're just not going to go there. So this is passive profiling, very simple. We also try to bake simple into everything we do with SeeFusion. So you give your profile a name, and so let's call it profile 2. You select a duration. I'm going to select a 1-minute duration, and you select an interval during that duration. So I'm going to say every 1 second. Generally speaking, what should happen is every 1 second, at an interval of every 1 second, for 60 seconds, SeeFusion will take a snapshot and will try to capture any running requests, and then we will summarize some information about those requests. So I'm going to start this profiler live here. A couple of minor UI bugs. You see that jumped way down to 47 seconds to start. The timers are not, this is not an atomic clock here that's driving this timer. It's all browser-based JavaScript. But for the most part, this will tick down in real time, and you can see that we're recording a bunch of snapshots here. And then once this is done, you can walk away and let this sit. And even if you refresh the browser, you'll see that this will just be going on in the background. So we start a separate thread, a gentle thread running in the background and to do all of this. And so you'll also see, I don't remember, I'll let this finish, but from the, go over to another instance here. When you are creating a profile, there are preset amounts, preset durations for how long it'll record. We only let you go out to 1 hour. Generally speaking, the amount of information you'll capture will be based on how busy the system is. And so for really busy systems, you can go with shorter durations and shorter intervals as well, or longer intervals rather, and you'll capture more. If you've got a system that's less busy, you're going to want shorter intervals and maybe a longer duration. So anyway, let's go back over to our Web 1 server here. So this is the one I just recorded. And so let's take a jump in there. We got 73 snapshots in 60 seconds. Technically, we were supposed to get 60, but those numbers will be a little off here and there. There might actually be some UI bugs in there that we'll polish up in 5.1, which I'll talk about. But now as you drill in to the profile, you get some really, really useful summary information. And so what happened is we recorded 20 traces, and this is what we found. So a trace is going to capture everything that's running when we run the trace, when we capture the trace during the duration of the recording. So in this case, we saw this request running 20 times. It was captured 20 times, and it's already highlighted over here on the right. It pulls out the actual code file and the location of that code and the line number, and it shows you, oh, in a minute's time, this code file here on line 47 was caught running 20 times. That's probably something we want to go look at. And as these numbers vary, you'll adjust how quickly you go intervene. This request here was caught 6 times, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we found this guy running once. So again, and as you can see, it incorporates SeeStack. By the way, these libraries that interpret the stack for you, we're going to be building out these libraries over time and making them richer. So right now, for example, we have waiting for data from network connection. Those descriptions will get richer and more plain English over time, and we'll be building them out so that, again, we're giving you as much problem-solving intelligence with as little investigation time as possible. No one knows as well as we do that sometimes these needle in a haystack things can really take a long, long time to diagnose and drill down to. So that's what profiles are attempting to do, is to make that process really narrow down for you and harvest as much useful troubleshooting information and performance engineering information as we possibly can in as short an amount of time. Okay, DOS protection, let's quickly talk about that. For many, many years, I mentioned that we've all worked on lots and lots of very high traffic systems, and DOS denial of service attacks, that's actually kind of a broad term. We might change this term, but really it's any kind of computer-generated traffic, right? System-generated traffic. That's not human traffic. That stuff's really debilitating, but it could be bots and crawlers and screen scrapers and all of that. So everything can be protected against all of those different types of traffic with what we're calling DOS protection, but we've labeled it DOS protection. So it's very simple. You turn it on and off, and you set these request limits and band durations, and so this will determine what gets captured, so number of concurrent requests from a single IP, for example, and how long you want that band to happen, so you can have temporary bands or permanent bands. And then over here is where you can remove things from the temporary or permanent list, and you can also establish exclusions. So what this will do is, as I mentioned earlier, SeeFusion runs in process with ColdFusion or Lucee. So by the time a request is protectable against by SeeFusion, it's already arrived at the server. It's already arrived at the NIC. Not quite at the web, yes, at the web server, because while SeeFusion does not run through whatever web server you're using, it's got its own built-in web server via a non-standard port. But the request, of course, for SeeFusion to intercept it via its mechanism has to have arrived at the server. So, but what will happen is that SeeFusion will prevent it from being handed off to ColdFusion or Lucee. And so it'll keep your ColdFusion or Lucee engine protected from filling up with threads and memory and all the things that this sort of traffic can do. It's not like an intrusion detection system that can block it, say, out at the border router or the load balancer, that sort of thing. So important to point that out. But the point is that by the time this traffic is arriving, if you haven't had some system farther out from the server protecting against this traffic, your last defense is going to be this DOS protection with SeeFusion. We got asked for it a lot, and this literally can keep your server alive if that sort of traffic is heading your way. We got asked for this feature a lot, and we finally baked it in. So that is DOS protection. Let me check the chat pod again. Flood protection. Did I say flood protection, or are you asking if we offer flood protection, Eric? That's our friend Eric. We've worked with Eric before. Let me just take a quick look at the chat pod. So some other things then. Well, yep, so Eric is suggesting it's not really DOS protection. Yeah. When we first designed it, we started calling it that like a year ago. The active development of SeeFusion 5 was roughly October of 2015 through May, through the ship date in May. It was just one of those things we got stuck on. So yeah, I think we're probably going to rename that maybe as 6.0. But anyway, some other things that are new to SeeFusion. One is, this is one we're kind of excited about. So we actually have live chat in-app support built in. You can see this cat named Patrick has been active recently with SeeFusion support, and also Matthew Stefanis on our team. So this allows us to come right onto your server, securely of course, and to start chat conversations, and you can include formatting and attachments. You can quickly paste in a screenshot to feed us information very, very quickly. And these conversations that you start will follow you actually all the way from SeeFusion.com, the website. You'll see that the same chat pod is live here. So as you go through asking us questions about SeeFusion, do I want to buy it? And then as you go through checkout, all these conversations these live chat conversations will be integrated in one spot, and it's fully integrated with email. So if you don't like live chat, or if you switch back and forth, it's any emails that come to support@seefusion.com, which has always been the single support address that we watch very closely. Those all come into our live chat support portal. And so whether you're using email for support or live chat, all the conversations are kept together, and this brings us right onto your servers to be able to help you with whatever problems or questions you may have. Installation and configuration support for SeeFusion always has been and always will be free, and so that is still free. Another one of the new features is that we have formal support plans that you can buy right along with SeeFusion from the website. We have package support, and this is based on many, many years of delivering consulting and support services. So we've tried to create packages according to what we think your most pressing and most common needs are going to be. And of course, we're going to try to get as much of the best practices information as we can over to your systems in package form. And so that's the support. However, if you don't like packages, and I'm not crazy about them myself, even though I designed them, we also just have blocks of support time. And so this is what other people would call incident support. We don't really like the term incident report, so we shy away from that. But this is just blocks of our consulting time. We have only the senior-most performance engineers and application engineers in the ColdFusion community, right up to the chief architect himself, Daryl Bantry of SeeFusion. And so all of that expertise is available in 4 blocks of time. This will turn to an add to cart button, by the way, probably next week. So that's another new offering that goes along with SeeFusion 5. And the last thing I want to highlight, and then I think we'll have time for FAQs, we also bent over backwards, and trust me when I tell you that it's a little painful to bend over backwards in keeping SeeFusion as affordable as possible. But SeeFusion 5 is just a couple of bucks more expensive than SeeFusion 4 was. Standard edition, $300 per server. Enterprise, $400 per server. And we actually have an hourly licensing option now. This is functioning, and we have a handful of beta customers who are running with this, but this is going to get finalized on the website in the coming weeks. This will actually formally launch the hourly licensing with SeeFusion 5.1. As a quick point of order, SeeFusion 5.1 is due out now in September, and so we've had a bunch of patch releases for SeeFusion 5, and that's really great and stable. And now we're quickly going to have another release that includes a few really important features. The formal launch of the hourly pricing. This is really for elastic environments. So we know as well as anyone that elastic hosting has turned elastic, and really the best hosting is truly elastic. And so it can be very hard to license a plug-in product like SeeFusion in those environments. So hourly licensing takes care of that. And you get a single license key. You apply it to whatever you use for your build, your server builds, whether it's Docker or auto-scaling in AWS or CloudFormation or you name it. And then as long as your instances running SeeFusion are running, you'll get docked an hour of licensing time. And then once they're off, you're no longer paying for licensing. So we baked that in to try to incorporate all of our customers, to serve all of our customers who are in elastic environments, including, by the way, all of the customers in our managed hosting cloud at Amazon. The other 2 primary features of 5.1 will be, one is a pretty important feature relative to DOS protection. You will notice over here, I'll go to the server IP. These servers are all behind a load balancer. And you will notice that the IP addresses look suspiciously like load balancer IPs, and in fact, those are load balancer IPs. You will not want to DOS protect against your load balancer IP. If you do, you'll stop all traffic to that from the load balancer to your ColdFusion server. Anyway, that's an important fix that's coming out. So DOS protection will actually look for the X-forwarded 4 header or whatever the header aliases are based on different load balancers. That's 5.1. And then the 5.1 feature that I am most excited about is integration with CloudWatch in Amazon Web Services. So SeeFusion will be able to write its metrics directly to CloudWatch in your Amazon environment if you're in there. We're already using this ourselves, and this is going to be key to what we do with building really indestructible cloud environments for our customers. With SeeFusion helping to keep them indestructible, we're feeding instance-specific request, query, memory, etc. information. All the information that you get from SeeFusion is going right in the CloudWatch, and then from there you can have Amazon's substantial monitoring system and reaction system take over, and you can scale up and down according to these internals of ColdFusion, or however you want to set it up. So that is the third and most important, feature that's coming out with 5.1. Okay, so let's see. We are at what? 52 minutes past the hour. I mentioned, I think I've covered all the what's new stuff: mobile ready UI, server profiles, incident reports, DOS protection, SeeStack, hourly licensing, live chat, and support plans. And so I tried to, I know I whipped through things really, really quickly there. And anyway, this is SeeFusion 5, so anyone can put any questions in the chat. We can do FAQ. Charlie, I think you said you might switch the display. Are we ready for that? My microphone must still be working.
And also, folks, please take a moment now to start filling out the evals on the right while you add any other questions or comments. And while we wait for that, I'll say thank you, Patrick, for the talk so far.
Yes, and let's see. So the chat window, okay, I'm watching over there. There we go. I see the large chat window. Okay, so I'll keep an eye on that. I see Dan Lance is typing. I already mentioned, responded to Eric. Hello again, Eric. Good to see you. We'll probably change DOS protection, the name of DOS protection in, probably won't be 5.1. Just got too much to do. Yes, so specific hourly pricing details. Question from Dan Lance. So it is going to be, we had to juggle a lot of considerations with this, and mostly related to what would the sweet spot be for pricing. So it's actually going to be mostly a sliding scale pricing structure, and based on the amount of licensing time that you buy. For example, you might buy 3,000 hours. You're going to have a low hourly price point, like 5 cents an hour or something like that. So again, we're really going for kind of the Amazon-esque no-brainer elastic pricing. If you want to, we're also going to have a higher price point, maybe 15 cents an hour, somewhere in that range, and that would serve customers who might want to use SeeFusion on just like an occasional basis, or if you just don't have that many servers or that many auto-scaling servers or whatever the case may be. Incident reports. Yes, Fusion Analytics user. That's a question from Steve, Fusion Analytics user. So a couple of points to touch on then. So incident reports, there's two main answers to your question there. So one of the things that we're doing is when there are incidents, and incidents are defined as anytime an active monitoring rule is triggered, and that's fully configurable by you. Anytime that happens, I'm switching back over to the SeeFusion UI here, it's recorded on screen. It's displayed on screen on the Incidents tab of the SeeFusion Enterprise dashboard. But what it's really important to... Yep, sorry.
All right, Patrick, I just switch it back to sharing the screen, so you need to choose to share your screen if you want to show what you were about to say.
Sorry, I forgot about that. Yep. Good catch.
You bet.
Thank you. I will pop back over.
I wish it was easier, but it just is what it is. All right, there you go.
Yeah, no problem. So if you configure an active monitoring rule, and that rule is triggered based on how you define the trigger. Let me get this live chat out of the way here. With these live chat guys bugging me all the time. Then two things will happen. We will log that to the database, and then it'll for SeeFusion Enterprise customers, it will display on screen. SeeFusion Enterprise customers are the only ones who can log to a database too, because database logging is only available for SeeFusion Enterprise. The point is, though, that logging to the database for SeeFusion Enterprise is highly configurable. So over here is the database logging configuration screen. You can set the log threshold. So this is the threshold beyond which Any requests will be logged, and we log a whole bunch of information to that database. The query threshold is here, and we log. You can turn on whether or not we capture the query exception if there was an exception. You can also log counters to the database, and then there's just an on-off switch. So the point is that while we will display incidents on screen for SeeFusion Enterprise customers, the fact is that all of this information, request, query, memory, and incident information, is all in the SeeFusion database. Now, this is not a SeeFusion 5.1 feature, but for SeeFusion 6.0, we are aiming for, it's not going to be Fusion Analytics. Those of you who've used Fusion Analytics know that it's just a very different sort of project. It's than what we would be engaged in as a services company that offers a product like this, as opposed to a product company that has a whole bunch of products. Fusion Analytics is it's complicated, it's extremely powerful, expensive too, and so we're not going to do anything like that. We're going to stick to our guns with what we do, but we're going to be offering probably an included application that's included with SeeFusion. There might be a nominal additional charge for this, that harvests all that information from the SeeFusion database so that you don't have to go in and write your own queries. There are just a couple of areas where we're pulling that information out and displaying it for you in SeeFusion in the console itself, but we're going to expand on that over time so that it's just, again, easier and easier for you to get to your analytics information and understand it and react to it very quickly. So I hope that answered Steve's question. And let's see. Oh, I'm still getting used to, Charlie, the fact that they auto-minimize the connect window.
The connected.
Okay.
Yeah, it is funny.
You're welcome, Steve. Hope that answered your question. And Charlie, let's see. Looking at the DB would allow you to see stuff from before a restart of the instance. Yeah. So Charlie's clarifying. So the reason the database logging feature for SeeFusion Enterprise is so important is because it's the persistence mechanism for all of these metrics. It'll live for as long as that database is in place, and this means it survives ColdFusion or Lucee crashes, restarts, anything that could happen to the system. All that data is going to be in there, and including the counters data. So counters, we spend a lot of time looking at counters over a time span following any kind of an incident, because that kind of minute by minute snapshot information really can be the heartbeat of your system, and you can see, oh, at 10:02 in the morning, we spiked way up in terms of queries, and you start working backwards from there, go over to the queries table and see that saved information there. And so that persistence mechanism is just really, really important. And again, hopefully by SeeFusion 6, we will have an even faster way for you to get into that data. We have been writing reports on that data really since that feature was first released, which was maybe about 2005. And so we use that information so heavily. And so the next thing, big goal for us, for our customers, is to get you an interface to that data that's lickety-split easy. So anyway, that's a clarification then on how the database logging works and what's important about it. I will make sure we're clear that query monitoring, so that's the ability to get metrics on query data, that's the JDBC wrapper. That's available for SeeFusion Standard or Enterprise. The logging of any data to the database, that's Enterprise only. So I want to clarify that. In a bake-off, what would you say are your main competitive features over Fusion Reactor? Yes, Hinsey, an old friend, asked the hard question. Good. So I have always been very public in saying, I know David, I know Darren, we meet them at conferences all the time. Those are the guys at Integral. These are salt-of-the-earth people. They're incredibly smart. Fusion Reactor is a beautiful product. They've done a really impressive job. And so then they've leapfrogged us in many ways. Now, in a lot of ways, we're catching up to where the lead that we had previously, not in every way, but with SeeFusion 5, we're catching up in a lot of ways. Server profiles was intended to do that, the DOS protection, some of those more important features that Fusion Reactor had. One of the most important things is that SeeFusion is a product that's offered by a ColdFusion consulting company or a Lucee consulting company. I've said this publicly many times, and I will stand by this until someone proves me wrong. I don't think there's anybody on planet Earth that's done more ColdFusion engineering than our team has. When you look at the team, and this is really the 5-person team behind SeeFusion as well as the rest of the staff here at WebApper, And by the way, Mr. Hinsey, who asked that question, has been an on and off member of our team as well over the years, so I'll call him out. But when you add up the amount of the number of engagements that we've done, the number of systems that we've worked on, it's really unparalleled. So having that kind of engineering expertise and ColdFusion platform-specific expertise behind the product, and a lot of that you would get in the form of engaging our support plans or our other larger consulting services, that is certainly one of our biggest advantages. I don't think anyone can meet us on that measure. The other thing, too, is that going back to what I had been saying about the fact that we are a services company that sells a great product, what we hope you think is a great product, it's priced very, very differently. So we have customers that have site licenses for SeeFusion that are hundreds and hundreds of licenses in size, and steep discounts there. So when you, for the lightning fast, no overhead information that you can get out of SeeFusion, it's unbeatable price-wise. Certainly if you need something like what Fusion Analytics offers, we don't offer that. And so that's just a difference, and it is what it is, and we don't worry about it, and those guys win. But if you are looking at just side-by-side comparisons in terms of price for the basic information that we think is most important to get out of ColdFusion or Lucee, it's pretty hard to beat. We are really, really affordable for what you can get out of the system. And so, excellent. Matt likes the integrated chat features. Excellent. Very good. Glad to hear that, Matt, and thanks for the question. So I'll stop sharing again so you can switch, Charlie, but I guess we may go back and forth. Dan Lance is typing another question. Chris W. Keep coming, keep coming. Thank you very much, Dan, for the comment. Dan commenting that he can vouch for a positive sales experience compared with Integral. Now, I certainly don't want to bash my good friends at Integral. Again, I've showered the compliments, and I always will. One thing you will, going back to what I was saying about WebApper, that's my company, and that's the host, if you will, of SeeFusion. We are still an all-engineer company, so I'm the CEO, but I'm just a ColdFusion developer from the trenches, from the old days. I still do spend way too much time in the support trenches. I really shouldn't be doing that, but you will get support from me via the live chat or via email, whichever one you use. And we have no sales folks here, and so that reflects all the things I've been saying about where SeeFusion fits into our company. And for now, that's just going to be the way it is. When you are talking to a quote-unquote salesperson, you're talking to a ColdFusion engineer, and that's it. There is nobody else to talk to. So I'm just expanding on that point there that Dan had made. So if you find that to be a better sales experience, then please come talk to us, because that's all you're going to get. Same per server for dev QA tests as opposed to production environments. Yes, so Chris W's question, sorry. Is it the same per server for dev, QA, test as opposed to production? So there is a free/developer mode for SeeFusion, which is that when you install SeeFusion, every time you restart the ColdFusion or Lucee instance, SeeFusion runs fully featured for 2 hours as SeeFusion Enterprise. So that could work on a development machine, and a lot of people use it that way, and it's free. It could also work in a QA or test environment, and a smaller number of people use it that way. That's, of course, a pretty unworkable approach for most production systems, for nearly all production systems. So if that's sufficient, then you can use SeeFusion for free, including if that works for you in production, you could use it for free there. And then from there, we usually tell customers, If you have like 1 or 2 development machines, we will give you free licenses for those if you're buying licenses for production QA. For the most part, we would expect you to have QA licensed if you have like a bona fide QA process and a QA environment. And there's just so much value to that that you'd want full licenses running there, even though you do have the option to run a free mode. Anyway, but the clarifying point there is that if you are buying production licenses or even QA licenses, we will often just toss in the developer licenses for free because we want you to be able to work on your developer workstations as much as you need to. And Dan Lance was just clarifying not to be criticism of Integral, and I agree with that. So it's just yeah, there are some differences in how we're structured as companies, and so that's just important to know. So thanks, Dan, for clarifying. And Charlie was clarifying too that Integral had a sales rep, apparently is no longer there, and so so it sounds like that's an improvement for the experience. But good for them. All right, Charlie. So we're at 7 after the hour. If there are additional questions, please fire them into the chat here. But it looks like we're quieting down. I will say that anyone in the world can send an email to support@seefusion.com, and there will be at least 5 of us keeping a close eye on that. Or if you want to go to seefusion.com and hop into the live chat pod, or if you happen to fire up SeeFusion on a server, that same live chat pod will be there. Please come to us with any and all questions and comments to any of those places, and we'll be more than happy to spend some time with you and get your questions answered and hopefully get you running with SeeFusion.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Patrick. And just in case there might be somebody who's waiting to ask a question that prefers not to do it while we're doing the recording, I'll go ahead and stop the recording now since the question in the comments have tapered off. But stick around for a moment because there may be somebody waiting to ask one.
Will do.
And with that, I'll go ahead and shut off the recording. And again, thanks for giving the talk.
You bet. Thanks for having me.